Coffee Crew, welcome back. I tried the Coffee Crew last episode and honestly, I liked it. So it stuck. You are henceforth known as the Coffee Crew now. Congratulations. You have been anointed a member of my Cool Kids Club. If I'm cool enough to have a Cool Kids Club, I guess. So here we are, March 3rd month of the new year. And I just want to do a quick little check-in because I just genuinely want to know how your resolutions are going. That's with no judgment. 0. If you set a goal in January and you had to shift it, it's not failure. It's just knowing yourself. That's wisdom. The best goals are sustainable life changes, not crash diets and trying to be, go from a couch potato to a marathon runner in 60 days. If your goal needs to breathe a little, let it breathe. Adjust the thing. Keep going. That counts, even if it doesn't always feel that way. So today we're going to do something with a little bit different in energy. A little softer. A little more, let's sit down and breathe episode. The world's gone crazy. Because burnout doesn't always announce itself with a dramatic crash. And like I said, the world's gone crazy, so we need some breathing space. Sometimes creativity just goes quiet and decides it wants to live like one of my cats and nap in the sun. And when creativity goes, so does your motivation. So today we're going to be talking about that. What creative burnout actually looks like, feels like, how to stop white knuckling your way back from it, how to let that spark return at its own pace. Oh, grab your coffee, grab a project if you want. I will try to limit the amount of numbers I say, so if you're counting, and let's get into it. Okay, let's start with what creative burnout is not. It is not always a drama queen. It's not always, sobbing on the floor, surrounded by 17 unfinished whips, works in progress, while your yarn stash is judging you silently from the corner. Although, if that happens to you, that's valid too. We don't shame here. We pour fresh cups of coffee and we just join you on the floor. The version nobody talks about is the quiet one. The pattern looks cute, seems doable, but when you sit down to start, nothing. A flat, gray, And by the way, I use crochet because that's my hobby, but insert your own hobby here. Anyway, the project keeps getting bumped to next week's list. The idea that sounds good in theory, but you just cannot make yourself care about it. So I have a confession here. Every single time I try to make one of those all in one piece pocket shawls, this happens to me. I don't know why. I can make ones that are I've made a skull one, I've made where you make a bunch of flowers and then you connect them. Those I can do no problem. But if it's just the same stitch over and over, I always quit partway through. And then usually I ended up frogging it because I decided I wanted the yarn for something else. Creative burnout does not always feel like exhaustion. Sometimes it feels like apathy, numbness. Like the thing you used to love does not feel like yours anymore. I've even had this happen with video games. When the thought of picking up your hook, controller, whatever, brings you the buzz instead of excitement, when it starts to feel like something you think you should do instead of something you actually want to do. And that really sneaks up, especially hard for us that create is self-care. Because when the thing that is supposed to restore your peace stops working, it's disorienting in a way that's hard to explain. It goes from being a hobby to a chore. And that feels like a loss. The thing that was supposed to, help you out is now just fills you full of dread. Which it can then be followed by guilt because you're not enjoying it. It's like you feel like you did something wrong. And not that your creative cup is just running on empty. Before we go any further, I do want to name something. Rest and avoidance look identical from the outside, but they feel different on the inside. Rest is your body asking for something. Avoidance is your brain protecting you from something. Both are valid, and neither means you're broken or doing anything wrong. So sit with this question. What if your creativity is not gone? What if it's just waiting for you to stop demanding things from it? Sometimes if we give it time to breathe, it'll come back. It's kind of like that smell that you love. Like a cologne or a perfume. It smells good, but not when you're drowning in it. Sometimes you got to let the room breathe a little bit and let it fade a little to enjoy the scent again. Okay, so while this story is not about burnout directly, I did have a little bit of a burnout episode because I had a hard time thinking of a story for this week. Sometimes it just doesn't come to me, and then sometimes it just flies right in. This one, I'm going to go back to high school. My best friend, or as I used to call him, he was my platonic soulmate, is a guy named James. Now, anyone who knows James will tell you James is a great guy who will do anything to make someone smile. And honestly, for him, if it makes him look like an ass in the process, well, he's even more willing to do it. Yeah. I can't even think about him sometimes without smiling because he's that nice of a guy. So I have major depressive disorder. And that comes with bad days, bad stretches. So during one of these bad days, James and I were out because if I was out, James was usually with me. We went everywhere together. We did everything together. And I was quiet. I didn't want to talk. I just wanted to kind of like sit and stew in my own bleh. And no matter what he tried, I wasn't feeling it. So he got the bright idea that he would roll his own head up in the car window. Yeah. Anything, remember? So at the moment, I just kind of rolled my eyes. Meanwhile, he's screaming while we're driving down the road. Why are you rolling my head up in the window? Anybody we're driving by is going to think we're insane. Because again, this is James, and this is the type of thing that James does. So we get to where we're going, and I don't even remember where it was. But he starts telling everybody that I was being so mean to him, and I rolled up his head in the window, and he was just trying to get some fresh air. It was with his full overdramatic flair that he brings to everything. So at this point, I start laughing and denying it. And, it brought me right out of my funk, and I'm laughing and telling everybody that I didn't do it. He did it to himself, to which he starts arguing back. What type of person would roll their own head up in the window? James. The answer is James. James is exactly that type of person. I mean, I took him everywhere, but he was very much the type of I can't take you anywhere person. If you cared about public spectacles, you did not want to take James along. So, creative burnout is kind of like a blah mood. Sometimes you just have to wait until something or someone lights the spark back up and pulls you out of it. You can't force it. You just need a James. Okay, so we've named it. For those of us in the crochet fandom, I'll call it that. It's Crojo. But you can insert your word here for whatever your creative outlet is. It's, Mad Lib style. But what do we actually do with it? The first thing, and I can't stress this enough, you can't force it back. You can't. But what you can do is make the conditions hospitable for it. Roll out that welcome mat, turn on the coffee, tea, flask of whiskey, whatever, and leave the light on. So for me personally, the thing that actually usually helps me find it for it to come back is a complicated project. Something with zero pressure attached to it, but it requires my brain to do extra thinking. It's almost like solving a puzzle. But one thing I will stress, do not give yourself a gifting deadline. And what do I mean by that? If you are the person who decides on December 1st that you are going to hand make gifts for all of your coworkers and set yourself on fire trying to finish 17 blankets by the 25th, I see you, sweetheart, and we need to have a separate talk after the show. So while for me, a complicated project helps, for others, it's finding something easy and no pressure. Maybe just sit and make some granny squares. Not for anything in particular, just start making granny squares. Granny squares are one of those versatile things you can make. Because once you have enough squares, you can connect them to make blankets, purses, shawls, shirts, coats. The list goes on what you can do with a granny square. But either way, there's no expectations for what you're going to make with them. No timeline. It's just your hands doing the thing. I've noticed burnout tends to hit me the hardest when I have been making multiples of the same thing, or forcing my way through a pattern that's just the same row on repeat forever. That's why I struggle with those all-in-one shawls. And even like regular blankets, I do what's called a duplicate stitch ones, because I need something that makes me think. Because then I'm not just going through the motions, I'm engaging again. Zoning out is nice. Checking out completely is not. Another way to help is to give yourself permission to do it badly. Make the thing ugly. You can frog it and start over. The point is the movement, not the output. See? Not perfect. It's not about making it perfect. It's just about making it. Sometimes the reset is not even about making at all. Sometimes it's just consuming. Go on YouTube and see what other people are making. Scroll through Ravelry and look for a pattern that sparks your interest. I will note that I prefer, personally, Ravelry. I know some of the pattern makers that I buy from, they get more of a cut from Ravelry than they do that other website. You can just go to the craft store, look around, go to Michael's, that's the one here, wherever your local craft store is, and touch things. Remember why you loved it. You're feeding the part of you that loves making without demanding anything in return. So you're feeding it, no output, you're filling the cup back up. That counts. Burnout lives in the nervous system. Arithmetic, repetitive crafting, crochet, knitting, hand quilting, coloring, making the same motion over and over helps regulate your nervous system. You know, you're not just making a hat, you're resetting something deeper. This is why I always recommend, if you can, have a couple different creative outlets. Or just a couple different hobbies that, you know, helps you with downtime. When one stops feeling good, switch to another. Coloring, puzzles. There you go. There's another one you could try. Puzzles. Something low effort that keeps your hand and your brain gently connected. And the last one I want to leave you with, because this is a big motto of my show, small wins still apply here. Even if you just finish one row, you untangle one ball of thread, just picking up the hook, putting it in your ponytail. You don't have to earn the right to create. You don't have to be productive. You don't have to make something Instagram worthy. You just have to show up. All right, besties, Brews News time. As always, I like to date it, so this is what I'm working with as of March 11th, 6:32 a.m. This week, the entire episode is just going to be an Epstein update because there's a lot and it's very significant. But I want to keep you informed. I am not CNN. So before we get into it, there's something, legal disclaimer. Being named, and I've said this before, being named in the FBI files is not proof of guilt. Not a conviction. It's not charges. What it is, however, for a lot of it, is a testimony given under penalty of perjury. Lying to federal investigators is a federal crime. You can't just tell the FBI bullshit. These are not random accusations on the internet. These are documented, on the record statements made to law enforcement multiple times. And that context matters for this update. So, quick bridge from last week's episode. Senator Wyden's March 13th deadline to the DEA about Operation Chain Reaction is in 2 more days. And we're going to be watching this one because, for the most part, with this administration, it's been one missed deadline after another. It's like a pile of dropped stitches or a taste of bad creamer. So here's what's new. NPR conducted an independent investigation and found that the DOJ, which is legally required by a law that Trump himself signed into the books to release all the Epstein files, had withheld and in some cases removed from the public database dozens of pages of FBI documents. Specifically, files related to a woman who alleges she was sexually abused by both Epstein and Trump when she was between 13 and 15 years old in the early 1980s. Now, the FBI interviewed this woman 4 times, but only one of those interviews was in the public database. So the NPR tracked the missing pages using document serial numbers. They call them bait stamps, and found a gap of at least 53 pages. Now, initially, the DOJ declined to answer their questions on record. So NPR published the investigation. Then the DOJ released an additional 16 pages. But as of this recording, there's still 37 pages missing, which includes interview notes, law enforcement report, and license records. It's also worth noting here that the current public database is now 65,000 pages shorter than what they initially released. Meaning not only are they withholding information, they're actively deleting pages. In a normal world, where this was anyone else other than the sitting president, documented FBI interviews of this nature would automatically trigger a separate independent investigation. That's standard procedure. That is what any regular Joe Schmo would be facing. Instead, the DOJ announced the review is complete, no further prosecutions are expected, and withheld the files. It's like a kid who stole a cookie and said, "I don't know what happened to it." Meanwhile, they have chocolate all over their face. Both Republicans and Democrat members of the House Oversight Committee are now investigating the DOJ's handling of the missing documents. Bipartisan agreement on anything right now is rare, so it's worth noting. And Republican Chair James Comer joined the Democrats in pledging to look into it. In another bipartisan move, the committee also voted to subpoena Pam Bondi to testify on the handling. That means 5 Republicans had to cross the aisle to make that happen. So here's a detail I kind of want you to sit and stew with. The DOJ only released a portion of those previously withheld documents after the subpoena vote. Not before, after. Trump has denied any wrongdoings. The White House says he's been totally exonerated by the release of the files. The DOJ says it withheld documents that are either privileged, duplicates, or part of an ongoing investigation, although didn't they say there was nothing to see here? But not specified which category applies to the missing pages, or if an ongoing investigation actually exists, because again, I thought there was nothing to see here. A law exists requiring the files to be public. The files went missing are specifically the ones that mention a sitting president. NPR had to track them down by serial number to prove that they were even gone. DOJ cries the review is complete until there was a subpoena vote. Then they released a few more. Committee investigators estimate the 3 million release files account for about half of what the DOJ actually has in custody. That's a lot of coincidences lined up in a row. And these women deserve more. They deserve more than redacted pages and closed reviews. The DOJ document library is at justice.gov/Epstein if you want to look for yourself. I'm not going to read some of the interviews that just got released. They're extremely graphic. If you want to go look, I recommend you look, but just keep that trigger warning in your head. As always, contact your representatives, and we're going to keep watching that Operation Chain Reaction deadline response. Or lack of response. All right, let's go back to something softer for a minute, because we need it after all that urine barf called the DOJ. Creativity and burnout both kind of teach us the same thing. You can't push your way through everything. It's kind of like training your body. You try to force it, you're going to do nothing but hurt yourself. Yesterday, I increased the weight for my weightlifting goal. And my shoulder was already a little sore, and I tried to lift it, and my shoulder told me, absolutely not. It's time to take a break. You know, sometimes you just got to say, okay, let me step away and recharge. It's kind of like eating too much cake. You love cake. Cake is great. But if cake is all you eat, meal after meal, day after day, at some point, you're not even going to want to look at cake. It's not a cake problem. Nothing wrong with the cake. Cake hasn't changed. You need a break from cake problem. Cake's still good. Maybe eat a sandwich first. And probably some fiber too, because it seems like fiber is the thing now that none of us are getting enough of. I know my sons don't. The spark comes back when you make room for it, not when you demand it show up on schedule. Creativity is kind of like a cat. It does what it wants, when it wants, and not when you tell it to. And if you try to force it, you're going to get claws, teeth, and not much else. And then usually it goes and sulks in the corner. So you don't have to guilt yourself into sitting down at the craft table. Make the space, get quiet, trust that it's still there. It'll come to you. And sometimes even more like a cat, it will show up right in the middle of you doing something else entirely. You know, it'll walk up and sit on your keyboard. So this week, just pick up the thing you've been avoiding. Not to finish it. Not even to make progress on it. Just hold it. See how it feels in your hand. Maybe it's ready. Maybe it's not. Either answer is useful information. Because the project's not the point. The act of picking it up is. All right, it's time for our weekly Shuffle Happens. So take a nice, deep breath. Let the stress of burnout, chaos, and the news cycle leave you as you breathe out. This week's card is the Three of Wands. So close your eyes, as long as you're not driving, and let the description wash over you. The scene is set in a sandy, rocky landscape. At the center is a large tree, but not just any tree. This one looks like it grew itself on purpose. The roots have twisted and twined around each other, wrapping upward, building themselves into the trunk. Tucked among these roots, glowing, flickering lights, warm and quiet. The branches spread at the top, leaves in every color, like it could not decide between seasons and just chose them all. Not one color, but all colors, all options. And from the very top, light flows outward like embers lifting off the fire, drifting, rising, going somewhere out into the universe. Off to the side, the sun is rising. You can almost feel it, the warmth hitting the tree pulling that energy up through its roots, through the trunk, through the branches, all the way up to the very tips, until it releases it into the sky like it was always meant to. At the base of the tree is a door. Whatever this tree is holding, not holding it back, it's welcoming you in. Upright, the Three of Wands is expansion, forethought, foresight. Things already in motion. You did the work. You made the plan. You sent the ships out. Now, stand here and watch to see what comes back. It's not anxious waiting. It's confident watching. Your creativity did not disappear. It went somewhere, and it's on its way back. Reversed, though, this card is frustration, delays, feeling like nothing is moving, no matter how hard you try. That ship feels stuck. The horizon looks empty. The reverse Three of Wands asks, are you watching for your ships? Or have you decided that they ran amok and sank? Because creative burnout lives right here, in the reversed Three of Wands. Starting at the horizon, it's convinced you the spark is gone, convinced you lost the thing that made you feel like you. You lost the place you once found peace. Recovery, though, is flipping it upright. Standing on that shore with your coffee, roots twisting together underneath you, trusting that the light is still there and it's going to rise. It always does. You just have to wait for it. All right, coffee crew. Let's wrap this bad boy up. Creativity is not a machine. It does not run on demand. Can't just flip a switch. It's a cat. It does what it wants. I want what I want when I want it. It does, like a cat, run on care, rest, and a little bit of trust. And you're a maker. You're a creative output, even on the days you're not making anything. The hook doesn't need to be moving for a creative person to still be a creative person. Sometimes you just need a break. You're not broken. You're not lazy. You're not someone who used to be creative and then lost it. You're just someone who needed a minute. And that is so allowed. This week, share what you picked back up. Tag the show, email me, let the coffee crew know. We're building something here, and I love hearing from you. Speaking of building something, last I checked, we're 96 downloads away from 1,000. Exciting! Every new person who pulls up a chair is another human taking a moment of calm in the middle of an era of chaos. If this show has given you that, tell someone, leave a review, feed that algorithm monster. It matters more than you know. And as always, my cool kid coffee crew, keep your stitches sassy, your coffee strong, and your spirit grounded.